Recording in progress.
It is now 5 o'clock. I would like to call to order the Service and Development Committee meeting, Development and Service Committee meeting for Thursday, December the 15th, 2022. It is also the final meeting of the year. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Hugh?
Here.
Horatio?
Here.
Barron?
Here.
English?
Present.
Newton?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, ma'am. Item number 2 on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the November 17th, 2022 meeting.
Move for approval, Mr. Chair. Second.
Properly moved and seconded. Madam Clerk, can you call for the vote, please?
Hugh?
Yes.
Horatio?
Yes.
Barron?
Yes.
English?
Yes.
Newton?
Yes.
Motion approved.
On to item number 3 on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. If there's not any changes or any additions, Mr. Administrator.
No changes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Move to approve. Second.
And properly moved and seconded. Madam Clerk, could you call for the vote, please?
Hugh?
Yes.
Horatio?
Yes.
Barron?
Yes.
English?
Yes.
Newton? Motion approved.
Items for action. We have the FY22 annual roads report. Staff requested that the County Council receive the attached annual report for information and general publication.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. I have 2 members of the Department of Public Works, both Director Maloney and County Engineer Fuller. So I will see whether or not there's any information that you have questions about. But I believe it is just for information. Is there anything else to? No, I believe it is just for your information and general public information.
Does any of my colleagues have any questions? Yes, ma'am, Ms. Newton.
Trying to find it in my notes. First, thank you for providing this. It was very helpful, and it was interesting for me to see the different things that were done for the different districts. And I will say that there was more parity than I would have expected before I saw the report. So I was especially pleased to see that. I'm switching to electronic agendas, so I have a slightly harder time. I just had a question. In some of your other reports where you report on areas, you report on the area where the Richland County team is based, or what the team is called. So there's a map somewhere in here where it looks like Eastover is a third of the county.
Yes.
And is that just simply where you're referring to this is the crew that services the roads of this area?
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
Perfect. That's all. Thank you.
Newton, does anyone else have any questions? Ma'am, is there any information that you think council should know?
No, I think the intent of the report is just to make it clear what we're doing on a day-to-day basis, our efforts, and also the Department of Transportation. And then the list at the very back details by district what was done.
Thank you, ma'am. Or Mr. Malinowski.
Hey, Mr. Chair, I was just wondering, in looking at the department, some of them are listed as transportation and other public works. Can you tell us how this differentiation comes about, please?
Are you referring to the tables at the back?
Yes, on the resurfacing projects
Yes, sir.
for each
So
district.
if it lists off transportation, then it was the Penny Department of Transportation that did the work. So they did the resurfacing. And then if it says Public Works, then Public Works oversaw the work.
The question is, how is it determined which entity would either be doing or did that work? The Penny versus Public Works.
My understanding is the Department of Transportation had a list that came about at their origin that listed off roads, and that was based on the pavement condition in 2015 of every road. So they generated their list at that time. So now they're just working their way through their list. The Department of the Department of Public Works, we look at the road conditions every year, and then we look at the funding that we have available, and we put usually one, maybe two packages together each year.
Okay, so this is the Penny Tax Transportation, not SCDOT.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I guess the reason I was asking that question, of course, is because I didn't think that within the penny tax, again, there was a resurfacing amount. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sir, any more questions? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When we first started this, and Mr. Maloney, you can correct me if I'm wrong, there was a list of all the roads in all the districts. Will there be an update on that going forward?
You recognize Mr. Maloney.
Thank you, sir. Would that be for paved roads or both paved roads and dirt roads?
I think this list both.
Yes, ma'am. We do have a list in a spreadsheet by district. We can sort it however a council member wants to see it. We can provide that of all the roads in the district, paved and unpaved. And so we're working on some of that, mostly for the dirt road program right now. But Public Works has probably the most up-to-date list on the paved roads that are going through some sort of maintenance.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am. Questions? I just would like to commend Mr. Maloney and your team for doing an excellent job and maintaining and keeping up with these projects. And I guess we're looking forward to it. I know in my district, dirt roads are a hot topic. And so I'm kind of glad Ms. English asked that question, because I know we had some discrepancies at the beginning of the year where people were trying to figure out, like, where did they land at on that list. So I'm sure we'll be looking forward to out those phone calls for those constituents trying to wonder why they're not at the top of that list. So thank y'all for all the work you do.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. On to item number 4B. That's the amendment of the fireworks ordinance. I just want to take this opportunity to say that, this ordinance was in front of full council, but I take full responsibility for being the chair of this committee and also spearheading the fireworks ordinance. We missed a lot of key stakeholders in the community when it came to this fireworks ordinance. And I just want to thank Mr. Wright and his team for meeting with me and some of the stakeholders in the community, figuring out how we can hash this thing out. We made a few changes to the ordinance once it got to full council, and I felt that as the chair of this committee, that it was only right that I send it back to committee so we can answer any questions that my colleagues may have had, and then we'll send it back to full council for approval. And so that's kind of where we are and how this made it back to committee. I thought it was important for us to bring it back to committee and have these discussions amongst each other, just in case we needed to make any other changes. Mr. Wright, could you explain to my colleagues the changes that we made once we got it to full council?
Yes, Mr. Chair. We talked about making some changes regarding, so they're adding in some other holidays, specific holidays, because there are a number of different holidays that I guess weren't considered. But after talking to the Fireworks Association, they thought that the times that we have in here and the ones as adjusted, instead of naming all the specific holidays, most of those holidays, they're done by a certain time period, probably about 11 o'clock. So with these time limits, and they did recommend changing in section B from 12:30 to 1 and from 9 a.m. to 7. But they thought that the other holidays would actually come under that. So just with these times, instead of naming specific holidays, that this works instead of having a list of holidays, because you're going to miss some if you list them out like that. So they were good with the way we have it as is. In section C, subsection 3, we did change it from the age of 14 to 16, because that's in line with state law as far as the 16-year-old. And probably the main changes are regarding the fine. And that was one, and actually talking with the chair, the council chair, just wanted to have more bite. So had first offense $500 instead of the $100, and second offense $750, third offense $1,000. And in section F, it was just a couple of changes, just basically grammar things. And the final one, H, disputed violations will be heard in the local magistrate court upon petition of the alleged offender. That just gives a way for someone who disputes or wants to appeal the ticket they got, they would go to magistrate court. So those are the changes or recommended changes.
Recognize Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Now, I'm not sure if Attorney Wright is telling us that some of these things have been removed, I'm guessing, because like you said, section H. The H that I have in front of me doesn't say a word about magistrate court, or is that an item that's been removed?
There's a red line version.
Not on mine. I have one version, and it's all just one color black ink, followed by the public nuisance. I have 2 pages for this.
Mr. Chair, if I may, that's what I have too. So I don't have.
Mr. Chair, may I
Recognize,
recognize?
ma'am.
Thank you. That was a printed copy that was presented to you on Tuesday, because we received the information after agendas were distributed. So everyone received a printed copy on your dais on Tuesday.
Recognize Ms. Barron.
I guess I need to say a point of personal privilege. For those of us who are paperless, it would be helpful when you give us a printed version to also email it to us, because I didn't bring that paper version today. But if I have it digitally, I can use it. Thank you.
Mr. Malinowski, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And to add to what Ms. Barron said, with all the paper that gets thrown on our desk, it would have been nice if somebody said, hey, on your desk is an ordinance change coming up about, and it's redlined or whatever. I don't recall that was there. At the end of the day, all the paper shuffled, put in the envelope, and I take it out of here. I had this agenda prior to Tuesday, and that's what I was using as the basis for any questions I had. So let's go back. Did you say, Mr. Wright, that this has been changed from 14 to 16?
Yes.
And what's the basis for that?
We just had discussions with the Fireworks Association, and there's actually a state law where it says 16. So we just want to be equal, to have the same number as the state law has.
And the other portion to that too is that that is when you're legally allowed to have a driver's license, which is also provides your identity card to be able to purchase fireworks.
That's fine. Mr. Chair, if I may, I have a couple
sir.
other questions.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. I only have the original version here, so.
It's right there in front of you, sir.
Oh, magnification. Okay. Well, under C, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You still got 6 items. So number 2, intentionally detonate fireworks upon the land of another without express prior consent. And then when you jump down to number 4, where it says ignite or detonate fireworks within 600 feet of a church, hospital, or public school. I may have a local church and I know the pastor and he gives me permission because of all the room they have land-wise or parking lot-wise. So which law am I coming under? I've got the consent of the pastor of the church, but down here it says I can't do it at a church. So which is it? I think we need a little more specificity in that one. And again, when you say without express prior consent, I just call them up and get it verbally on the phone. Do I have to have it written?
Yeah, well, if the individual who owns the property said you had consent, that should be enough because, it's not coming to us anyway. It's only if there's someone calls them. So if the owner of the property or the church, for example, calls them, that's how a ticket would be issued. Because I don't think that the sheriff's department or code enforcement is going to be going out looking for people.
And on F. Hey, thank you for making that bigger. Can you scroll up to F, please? There you go. Okay, looks taking out what my question was regarding 3 separate violations. So now we just have first, second, and third offense. Go back to the previous page so I can see what precedes it. Okay, well now, how are the defenses the way you have it now, since you've taken out each particular incident is a separate offense, and now you've got them first, second, and third offense. How is that determined if I own a set of apartments or I rent rent rooms out in my house, the address is the same, and there's 3 different offenses by 3 different people possibly. How does that work?
This is because it's for the individual, the person. It's not for the complex.
For the person.
The ticket is given to the individual who's doing it, right?
As long as I have enough friends over that are doing it, and I can keep saying, it's Derek, it's Gretchen, it's Cheryl, we all just keep getting fined one time, right? As long as everybody's willing to take the fall that day.
Well, in any court matter, you have to prove the case regardless. So you have to prove that this is the individual. So that's how it's going to be regardless.
Okay. These offenses, it doesn't say in here, first, second, or third offense, a time frame that takes place. I could have 2 offenses this 4th of July and don't have another offense for 10 years, and all of a sudden I have another offense. There's a third offense, but it's 10 years away. I think we should have some type of a time frame, 3 offenses within a period of time.
You can do whatever you want. I mean, the council's making it, so
right.
If you want.
I won't be here when they do that, but that's my suggestion. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome, sir. Ms. Newton, you have the floor.
Thank you. 2 questions. And the first is actually related to what Mr. Malinowski was asking about for schools and churches. So when I was looking at this, I have constituents who live across the street from schools and are within 600 feet. And so are we saying that those persons are not allowed to shoot fireworks at their homes because they happen to live close to these establishments? Are we automatically excluding them? Or how does that work?
So I do want my colleagues to understand that this is a framework to give Richland County some type of bite when it comes to people firing fireworks in the middle of the day or when there's not a holiday going on. So, Mr. Wright, you good? You can go ahead, sir.
Well, if you live right across the street from a church, this would apply. I mean, unless the council wants to make that an exception.
Okay.
A church, a hospital, or a school. So you mean, so if you live across from a school or hospital, do you want the people to be firing fireworks? So, I mean, that's up to council to determine.
And I guess part of the question is that some of the frameworks of this ordinance, I mean, school's not going to be in session when you are firing the fireworks at your house. So that is something that I would like for us to address. And then I guess the second thing addresses partially discretion and also, thank you, ma'am, the fine. So for me, and it truly bothers me when people are, firing off fireworks late at night when they shouldn't be. A $500 fine the first time you tell me to stop feels very high to me, particularly in part because no matter how good a job we're going to do communicating this, it's hard for me to imagine that every single citizen who fires fireworks in Richland County is going to know that this has changed. And I think I know they say ignorance is no excuse for the law, but I don't know if it's an excuse for the ordinance while we're, changing over for the first time. And so I guess my question, I would say that to my colleagues, to me that feels high for the first time. Now, if you want to come back again and then slap them with, I think you had $750 or whatever, I'm fine with it being high after you've been warned, but that just feels high for me to start with. So that's a statement. But then I guess my second question is, as we look at enforcement of this, is it a mandatory fine, or are we saying that there's discretion? And discretion is a double-edged sword, because that means that sometimes it can be applied fairly and sometimes not.
With that being said, Ms. Newton, we work hand in hand with the Sheriff's Department to help develop this. And so there is a discretionary clause in there. I don't see the Richland County Sheriff's Department pulling up and kicking down doors trying to find fireworks. It just gives them an opportunity to be able to come out and make a judgment upon arrival.
And Mr. Chair, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Mr. Wright.
Oh, no, and there in Section F, it does say that the county fire official may authorize someone. So someone can get authorization to shoot fireworks, but they have to get that prior authorization from the county fire official.
No, I get it, and I see also that it says up to, and I know they're not trying to break down the doors. Like I said, I just wanted to state, for me, for persons who may not be aware, I just feel like that's a lot, particularly if I'm going to stop shooting. If you're going to come and tell me, and I'll say, oh, I didn't know, and then I would stop and go to bed, and then it would be done. So,
Mr. Racio, you recognize?
Thank you. And I don't know if this is helpful language or not, and I'll just kind of go in order in terms of how it's laid out on the page. In terms of C4, to ignite or detonate fireworks within 600 feet of a church, hospital, or public school, perhaps it could be helpful with that phrasing to add unless in these designated hours, and that could possibly make the ordinance more clear. And then that way that would allow folks who live right by Hand Middle School to, celebrate New Year's like they do, and not be in, well, I guess Hand is in the city, but so that's not a good example, but you see what I'm saying? So someone who lives right across the school could celebrate the New Year's Eve, go outside, shoot off, send off a few fireworks in the evening, and then go to bed, and they would be within their rights to do so. So I don't know if that's helpful or not, but just thought I would add that. And then I agree with Ms. Newton in, E, where the first offense amount does seem quite high. And I like what we were offered on page 37, I guess it is, with the public nuisance correspondence regarding, I think it was like $100 to start with. And perhaps we do $100 for a first offense, but we could absolutely ramp it up because we would, like Mr. Malinowski said, want to have a time limit on when your first and second offenses happen. And I believe that there was a suggestion of days or perhaps a week. And so maybe we could add a phrase that says within a 7-day period. So a first offense, second offense, third offense within a 7-day period. Perhaps that could ensure that whoever's doing the offenses really gets the point. So that's all from me.
Ms. Barron, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This has been some healthy dialogue today, but I do think that because many of us sitting here today didn't realize that what they had in their possessions on Tuesday, it gives us an opportunity to go back and look at it. But I would like for us to, as a committee, consider to move this forward and move it out of the committee. Also, I want us to be reminded of the intent of the motion, or the intent of this ordinance is, one, to provide some type of quiet hours for residents here in Richland County, specifically those who may be suffering from PTSD, any type of traumatic situations. And so given that, I know personally I enjoy fireworks. I do. But I don't enjoy them at 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning. I don't sleep in that time. So with that, I hear everyone stating about the fines and different things of that nature. I think all of those things we can consider as we move this out of the committee, and then making those suggestions as a part of the final ordinance that is to be presented. So, Mr. Chair, I'm prepared to make a motion.
Is there a second?
No.
For discussion?
I'll make a second for discussion.
All right. English, you recognize, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
But my motion, let me state my motion. So my motion is to accept the revisions that the attorney has provided for us today, and to be able to move this to full council.
Is there a second?
I'll second for discussion.
All right. Ms. English, you recognize.
Thank you. That was one of the things that I wanted us the committee to consider, is the removal or the separation of the hospital from the church and the school altogether. I don't feel at any time that there should be any fireworks ignited around a hospital. So if we could separate hospital from that. Does that make sense?
Malinowski, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On page 36, but it's also here on this new one I was handed. The new one has under letter F for Foxtrot. The old one is G for golf. It says the county fire official. I think we need to be as specific as possible in stating who the county fire official is. A lot of people may hear this, run down to their local neighborhood fire station, and some fireman that's in there will say, yeah, go ahead, you can shoot off fireworks tonight. I mean, for a permit, I think we need to say who is the specific official that's going to be issuing this permit.
Thank you, sir. I'm really glad we brought this back to committee because I see that we have some discrepancies on some things that weren't even changed in the fireworks ordinance. And so we have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, could you call for the vote, please? I'm sorry, Ms. Newton, you're recognized.
Yeah, really quickly. So the way that I understand the motion is to send it as is with the red line version without any of the revisions. So just so you won't be surprised, I'll say these same things again at full council. I guess I wish there was is there some mechanism? Maybe I'll just email my feedback to everybody so that they have it. And I support the fireworks motion. I'm going to vote no to this item so that it stays off the consent agenda. But I do still have my concerns about the fines.
Yes, Ms. Rachel.
Thank you. And so just when this does come to full council, can the briefing document and just include some of the suggestions, I guess, that we have made so that full council knows what the points of discussion have been in committee?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Barron.
So perhaps it would be helpful maybe if I amend my agenda, amend my ordinance or my motion. What is this? Good grief. Is it Christmas yet? Amend my motion so that it can reflect the suggestions that were brought up here today. That way, we don't have to revisit this again, and it's already in the stated document. So with that, I'd like to amend my motion to include the recommendations from the attorney's office as well as those that were made today during the meeting.
I'll second that amended motion.
Mr. Chair.
Right, so it's been moved and I'm sorry, Mr. Wright, go ahead.
And I'll let you finish here.
I said it's been moved and properly seconded. Any more discussion?
Mr. Chair. I guess my thing is that maybe just to be sure that you have before council the different things that you want them to consider, the full council, is maybe send an email to the clerk with your recommendations, even if they weren't stated today, just so that, because some of them are, I don't want to say contradictory, but it's like, as far as, for example, fines, do you want it to be 500 or 100 or whatever? Council at any point before the third reading, before final reading, third reading, because they have to be three readings, it can be changed. But if you wanted to go before council with certain recommendations, probably have it an email or something, because I guess certain people would want 500, some may want 100. So it's going to be different because different council members may have different recommendations. So that's the only recommendation. If you want multiple things, just have that so that it can be presented by the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. So with that being said, Madam Clerk, can you call for the vote, please? Yes.
Rachel?
Yes.
Barron?
Yes.
English?
Yes.
Newton? Motion approved.
Thank y'all very much. Moving on to item 5 on the agenda is an update from a ordinance that was submitted by Ms. Newton. Is to move to direct the administrator to conduct a review of the ranking weed vegetation ordinance and recommend any updates that would improve the effectiveness of the ordinance, particularly as it relates to safety and enforcing and the blight reduction. I'm sorry, guys. So there is an update. It says staff will submit the following schedule regarding the efforts of the committee's awareness on January through February of 2023 is researching the ordinance from other counties, other communities and industries based on the management practices on best management practices. March 2023 report on the research findings to the committee. April 2023 directions from the committee. So, Ms. Newton, do you have anything for this?
Thank you.
All right. Any discussion from colleagues? Mr. Wright, Mr. Brown?
Not on this item, Mr. Chair, but on the first item that we, if you will, when you get done with this, if we could give me a moment to ask you a question about that item, sir.
Oh, we're done with it. You can go, sir.
So on the first item that was presented, the roads, it does not require any action of council, but in order to get this from your agenda to council, it will require a motion if you want to handle it that way.
So moved. Second.
Madam Clerk, can you call for the vote?
You,
Yes.
Teresia,
Yes.
Barron,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you.
Number one. Yes, sir. All right. With that being said,
Move to adjourn. Second.
it's been moved and properly second. Madam Clerk, could you call for the vote, please?
You,
Yes.
Barron,
Yes.
Teresia,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
That now adjourned.